let's start off with some of the election and what's going on. Things are really heating up. Now you've got. I'm astounded by the fact that Trump derangement syndrome still exists with so many. But of course, I'm not. I shouldn't be that surprised because they're definitely going after him. It's obviously, in my opinion, political persecution. They're just trying to do anything they can to subvert him. They do not want him in the Oval Office again. They do not want him, if they can help it, they don't want him to be the GOP nominee. They'd rather him be in jail and basically say you can't run the country from jail. They don't want him in the White House, and they've done absolutely everything they can to subvert him. And in my opinion, very undemocratically. Here they are saying, we're protecting democracy. We have to protect democracy from Trump. And meanwhile, they're doing everything they can to be undemocratic while doing it by robbing the American people of their choices, by saying he's a crook, and then going after him for some really odd things that they claim, things like questioning an election. That's actually a democratic principle. You should be allowed to question an election in a democracy. It's in those authoritarian, totalitarian states where you're not allowed to question the election. Doing things like go to the White House and peacefully and respectfully protest. That is what he said that day. I don't think that's the exact quote, but it was definitely peaceful. I believe he said, we're going to go march and respectfully and peacefully protest at the White House, but or at wherever it was, the Capitol building. But they say, no, he was inciting violence. It is undemocratic, actually, to say that somebody who's encouraging protesting is instead a criminal. I mean, that is undemocratic, and yet they're continuing to push this. The Trump derangement syndrome is real. Here's now Bernie Sanders. I want to play this clip for you. He was on what was the Sunday show that they do? That's State of the Union. Was it State of the Union? He was on State of the Union, and he made some comments, and he followed up with them on CNN, where he's basically saying everybody needs to vote for Joe Biden. We have to save democracy. Here's Bernie Sanders.
Senator Sanders, Cornel West, who is a close ally of yours, he is running a third-party campaign for president. He recently criticized you for endorsing President Biden's reelection. Listen to what he said.
I love the brother, and you even in love, people have deep disagreements about these things. But I think, again, he's fearful of the neo-fascism of Trump. People look at Biden, they don't really want to tell the full truth. He's created the best economy that we can get. Is this the best that we can get? You're going to tell that lie to the people just for Biden to win?
What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that certainly is not the best economy that we can create. That was what my speech was about yesterday. We've got to join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all. We've got to cut the cost of prescription drugs in half. We've got to raise the minimum wage to at least $17 an hour. We've got to build the affordable housing we desperately need. But where I disagree with my good friend, Cornel West, is I think in these really very difficult times where there is a real question whether democracy is going to remain in the United States of America. Donald Trump is not somebody who believes in democracy, whether women are going to be able to continue to control their own bodies, whether we have social justice in America, we end bigotry. Around that, I think we have got to bring the entire progressive community to defeat Trump or whoever the Republican nominee will be, support Biden, but at the same time, which is what I did yesterday, is demand that the Democratic Party, not just Biden, have the guts to take on corporate greed and the massive levels of income and wealth inequality that we see today.
So it's still amazing to me that, even Bernie Sanders, who was fighting for a revolution, cannot, and he's a very populist candidate in himself, really just flipped and became Democratic establishment, and really not just Democratic establishment, but just establishment, just insider, beltway, somebody who's no longer fighting for a populist movement, but just saying, no, Trump is a threat to democracy. I mean, listen to these people. And it's disheartening that even a guy like Bernie Sanders would actually fall for this, where it's so obviously undemocratic what they're doing. What they're doing is completely against democracy. And yet they say, but we're saving democracy. We're doing this for your own good, is what they're saying. We need to do this in the name of protecting, we're going to completely overreach and go overboard and rip rights away, but we have to in order to protect you. That was the entire premise for the Patriot Act. That's been the premise for every single surveillance on us and all the things that they do to us is because they say, we're going to give you fewer rights, but trust me, this is for your own good. This is giving you more freedom. We're taking freedom away to give you more freedom. And that is what the never Trump derangement syndrome people, when they say, the threat to humanity, the threat to democracy, we have to halt this. And for Bernie Sanders to be saying about Cornel West, all he's going to do is help. He's running third parties. So Dr. Cornel West is running third party on the Green Party ticket. Now, you might not agree with the guy. You might not like his politics. Fine. But he's running on a third party ticket because he doesn't want to run as a Democrat. He's certainly not a Republican. And we live in a democracy. And yet you've got guys like Bernie Sanders saying, this is only going to help Trump win. And now is not the time. Now is not that we are in the middle of a crisis. Trump is going to get in there and ruin the world. We already had Trump. We already know what he did. He did a better job than Biden. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We had a better economy under Trump. We had war that was declining. Trump did not fully remove troops out of the Middle East. He didn't fully, but he was definitely more diplomatic. He went and met with Kim Jong-un. He was trying to avoid war. He was war avoidant. And yet, yes, you could look at his record and say, well, but he dropped more drones. Or, there's definitely things that you can look at and pinpoint and pick apart with Trump. But he was the only president where there were no new wars under him. And look at where we're at with Biden. We're on the brink of World War III, and people are actually thinking this is better. How could anybody believe this? And because, by the way, once you go into war, if we were to really, truly enter into war, and then they enact all kinds of crazy laws on us, martial law, they do crazy things under the guise of war. And they start creating new laws and things you can and cannot do. But don't worry, that this was all in the name of democracy because the alternative was Donald Trump. And that guy, well, he's crass and he just, I don't know, sits on the toilet and tweets and it's just terrible and we don't like it. That's the guy they're saving us from. But it goes on. It's not just Bernie Sanders. Here's actually, I want to play this one for you. This is Crystal Ball. She's also, now this is somebody who's been touted as actually wrote a book, The Populist Guide, I believe, to 2021. So populism was the name of the game. That's how Crystal and Saga really rose up in fame by being populists. That has clearly really shifted. And now she's a big supporter of Marianne Williamson. That's fine. Everybody's got their candidate. That's her candidate. But she really believes that third party is dangerous. These are people who are supposed to be supporting democracy, people who say, we're doing this in the name of democracy, yet they say, in the name of democracy, having democracy is a bad thing. Listen to this.
So there's two pieces of this. One part I actually agree with and one part I really disagree with. And I think profoundly goes against everything that he previously stood for and argued for. So the part that I'll start with the part I agree on. I think he's basically correct about third parties. Mm-hmm. I think the only thing that Cornel West, Dr. West, who I love, admire, respect, whose politics I almost wholly and completely share, I think effectively the only thing that his campaign will accomplish is, number one, helping to reelect Donald Trump, and number two, hurting the left. Because ultimately, there's just a poll that came out that showed Biden and Trump basically tied in a head-to-head. You throw Cornel West in, and Trump is winning by like 5 points. And the margin is just exactly the amount that Dr. West takes away from Joe Biden. Now, listen, it's fully on Joe Biden that he needs to do more to appeal to potential Cornel West voters, but let's live in the land of reality of how this is going to work out. They're not going to do that. Dr. West will take some percentage, relatively small percentage, away from the Democratic total, and it makes it easier for Donald Trump to get elected. So if your priority is reelecting a Democrat, and if you believe, as I do, that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are not equivalent, that Joe Biden has been better in particular on economics, but also with things like the withdrawal from Afghanistan, then yeah, I think a third-party effort makes it more likely that Donald Trump gets reelected. And the reason why I say I think it will ultimately also hurt the left wing and left principles, if that's what you care about, is we have the model of 2016. Look, the theory in 2016 with Jill Stein was if we withhold our votes from the Democrats and that's going to force them to the table, we're going to have a voice in the room, they're going to have to come to our side. No, That's not what they did. Instead, they demonized anyone who would have even considered Jill Stein. They used it to demonize the left. They used it to undercut any sort of leftward push. And so while I would love to imagine that that theory of the case would work out, we've seen the reality, and that is not what happens.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this, but first of all, saying, okay, if your priority is to elect a Democrat, then don't vote for third party is what she's saying. That right there, I mean, look, you're obviously voting green because you don't want to elect a Democrat. That's why you would do it. So, okay, that's totally null and void. She was saying there that so then it's not so much, okay, if you don't like Democrats, fine. But if you want left principles and that's your priority is left wing and left principles, then she says, then that would be, then you should prioritize wanting to have a Democrat in office. Bullshit. I'm sorry, but when has the Democratic Party been left wing or have left principles? They've abandoned that. I'm seeing more left principles coming from the right than from the left these days. When I was a kid growing up, it was the left. It was Democrats who championed free speech, live and let live, anti-war. Those are now the chants of people coming from the right, the populists coming from the right, not the establishment. The establishment is still the establishment. We're going to get into that. But the populist base is saying, we don't want war. We want freedom. We don't want overreaching, surveilling government. We don't want all these things. These are the things that Democrats have been sitting in Congress questioning guys like Matt Taibbi, saying, you're not a journalist. Free speech. No, we censor. We need censorship. They want censorship. They want war. They want, they're not for free speech. They're not for, these are, so left wing or left principles. If you care about those things, then you absolutely would not vote for Democrats. And then to even cite, Joe Biden has been better on the economy. The economy is crap. Are you kidding me right now? Just because he was able to, they fake this, right? They say, well, he created more jobs in his presidency than any other president since, I think Roosevelt is who they're claiming. Okay, because everybody lost their jobs during the pandemic. So when you then open the economy back up and people get their jobs again, that doesn't count. You don't get to count that and say, oh, it's a win. No, you were one of the reasons why we locked down. It was your party. It was your people. That was your fault. And then you open it back up and said, see how great I am? I locked you in a cage and then I unlocked the cage and I let you out. So I gave you your freedom. Forget about the fact I'm the one who locked you in the cage in the first place. War in Afghanistan, the withdrawal in the war of Afghanistan. That was the worst, most piss poor withdrawal that we had seen. People were killed. It was chaos. That was not the way to do it. Donald Trump planned the withdrawal from Afghanistan, an actual plan. Now, you might not like it, but this is his plan was realistic. And that is why people don't like it. People are still living in fantasy land. And Donald Trump actually invited the Taliban to the United States to sit down and make a deal. He wanted to just say, all right, we're withdrawing. We're ending the war in Afghanistan. And guess who's in charge? It's going to be the Taliban, like it or not. And guess what? They are, like it or not. The Taliban are in charge in Afghanistan. The smart thing to do would have been to recognize that government, to help them become a better country so that they don't lack resources, which mean they have to rob people in their own country of freedoms and access to resources. Right now, when you make people impoverished and you only give them a certain amount of jobs and resources, they then start cherry picking who gets those jobs and who gets those resources. They go to the top, they go to the wealthy. In Afghanistan, they go to the men. So if you open things up, then there's a lot of jobs and the men can't fill all the jobs, so women have to start working. And then if women are gonna have to start working, they need to get educations. It's a domino effect, and it opens the world up. It keeps them from being backward. But instead, the Biden administration did that piss poor withdrawal out of Afghanistan, would not recognize the Taliban, sanction the Taliban to death, keeping them as poor could be, to where now absolutely there's less opportunity. And so they're keeping women sheltered away because all the opportunities need to go to the men because we have so few of them. That's how that works. Donald Trump was at least going to say to the Taliban, all right, you win. You win. But the neocons in Washington did not want that. They halted him from being able to do that. They preferred it Joe Biden's way, where we continue a war in Afghanistan without having boots on the ground. Now they're just droning them. Now they're sanctioning them. I wouldn't call that a win. I don't call that a win. Speaking of Biden, by the way, and then there's this idea that, Biden is better than Trump. Are you serious? So you'd rather have Biden who is not actually the president of the United States. We don't actually know who's running the country. Biden is clearly not mentally capable of that task anymore. I mean, he's clearly thinking of other things, vacationing, eating ice cream, his son's problems, whatever. But thinking about running the country, it's clearly, I think, to most of us who have a brain, we can see he's not the man in charge. And it would be nice to know actually who does have the code to the nukes. You know, it'd be nice to know who's actually running the country, who's making these decisions. We didn't elect whoever that person is, but Joe Biden is just the shell. And there's puppet masters behind the strings. We don't like that. And we'd rather have somebody, at least with Trump, he would be the guy that's actually, you know, as much as you can with the establishment. I get it. There's all of that going on in the background. There's a lot of forces that are trying to manipulate things and whatnot. But Biden, that's why they love him. They love him because he's easy. They don't even have to try that hard. They don't have to worry he's going to change his mind and tweet something out that's opposite of what they decided just a few moments earlier in their meeting. So they prefer Biden. But here's the thing, the voters don't really. I mean, they're pushing Biden. They're saying, don't do these third-party options like Cornel West. Don't vote for guys like RFK Jr. Don't pay attention to all these other people, all these other options. Focus on Biden. Yet, here's this article. I mean, this is not news. Biden's age is a significant concern for voters. Oh, you mean voters are thinking Biden is not totally the one running the country and that his mind isn't there and they're not sure how well he's going to do? Not even 5 years from now. Like, how is he going to be 5 years from now in his last stretch, the last year as president? At that point, you know, his mind is totally, he's like, well, whatever, screw it. These guys are completely, I mean, it would be like Ronald Reagan in the last few years where he wasn't running the presidency at all. That is not what we want. Here's what voters have to say. Here's actually the poll from AP. This says, age is a bigger re-election problem for Biden than Trump. They're saying that, you know, overall, do you think each of the following is too old to effectively serve another 4-year term as president or not? Overall, Joe Biden, 77% said, yeah, he's too old. He's too old to run. 69% of Democrats, that's the majority of Democrats, say he's too old to run. 89% of Republicans, of course, they're going to say that. Donald Trump, however, 71% of Democrats say, yeah, he's too old to run, of course. But they're saying he's too you name it. He's too orange to run. He's too fat to run. You know, they'll make anything up. Just he's too crooked. He's too crass. He's too everything to run. But only 28% of Republicans say he is too old to run. So clearly, you know, people are not thrilled about Joe Biden. They would like other options, but don't you dare, because if you do, democracy is at risk. Don't you understand? That democracy is at risk. So you need to vote in the guy who's going to be a puppet for somebody else who's running the country who you did not vote for. You see that? That's your democracy. It's mind-blowing. Now, this is what the establishment really would like to see. We've been talking about this on this show a bit, but this is interesting, an interesting development. Here's from Fox News. Biden and Harris advisors are irked by Newsom's plan to debate DeSantis. It's disrespectful. Yeah, the Democratic Party doesn't even want Biden to run. They want their good old boy, Gavin Newsom, very establishment. He'll definitely do exactly as the establishment says. He's like Joe Biden, except he's not as risky in their mind because all those voters who don't want Joe Biden because they're afraid he's too old, well, they might take a Gavin Newsom who's basically going to have the exact same policies, but he's not going to seem as old. So go for Gavin Newsom. So this is the establishment dream right here. This is the dream presidential race, Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis. So they're planning this debate because they cannot believe that it's probably going to be Biden and Trump again. They just cannot believe it. Like, how can America go for this? And so they're wanting these two establishment guys who represent the establishment on both sides. They want them to be the candidates, and this is what they're going for. But I just thought that was funny that, for one, they're going, they're talking about this. I don't know if they're really going through with it. It would be very odd. Neither of them are the nominee. And they won't be. Oh, Newsom might. I do think that they're going to push Biden out. And they're going to put Newsom in without a Democratic primary vote. I did predict that in a show. So possibly Newsom. DeSantis, I don't believe will be the guy. I mean, they're trying real hard, right? By putting Trump in, they're like trying to get him in jail. But here's what's really interesting. So look at this article. This is who would they rather have? Who's not going to trigger them to the point where they're like, we've got to lock this person up, impeach them numerous times, don't vote for anybody who you even agree with politically because you might end up getting Trump. Who would they rather have? Here's this. This is Nikki Haley. They're saying that Nikki Haley is the candidate we fear the most, says Biden team insiders. They're saying the only woman in the Republican race was boosted by a standout performance at her first primary debate. You've got guys like Ed Krasenstein on Twitter, who's a Democrat, very much pushing Democrat policies. And he's saying that answers like this one, answers like this, we're going to play this clip. He's saying answers like this is why she will win the moderate vote if given the chance. This is who Democrats believe is like a better choice for the country than Donald Trump. Watch this.
Many Americans may question the value of supporting Ukraine against the Russian invasion. What are our national interests here, and why should it matter to Americans?
It's been controversial on what we do with this Russian-Ukrainian war, but I'll tell you this. This is bigger than Ukraine. This is a war about freedom, and it's one we have to win. You look at those Ukrainians and what they do when Russia invaded their freedoms. They moved in there, went to the front lines, and fought for their country. The women said, we're not going to stay back. They made Molotov cocktails to defend their country. Everybody gave them 5 days to survive. But yet their passion and their will pushed them forward. What we have to understand is a win for Ukraine is a win for all of us, because tyrants tell us exactly what they're going to do. What we heard, China said they were going to take Hong Kong. They did it. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. We watched that happen. China says Taiwan's next. We better believe them. Russia said Poland and the Baltics are next. If that happens, we're looking at a world war. This is about preventing war. And so the way you prevent war is not that we give cash to Ukraine, not that we put troops on the ground, but that we get with our allies and we make sure that we give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. Because when Ukraine wins, that sends a message to China with Taiwan. It sends a message to Iran that wants to build a bomb. It sends a message to North Korea testing ballistic missiles. And it sends a message to Russia that it's over. That's what we have to do. And keep in mind, everybody wants to know, well, how does this war end? It would end in a day if Russia would pull out.
Okay, so they'd rather have a warmonger. Trump is bad. We have to do everything we can to stop Trump. But Nikki Haley is the one that that really they're worried about, because they think voters are going to prefer a warmonger. Talk about not having your finger on the pulse of America. When you've got people would rather have a warmonger than they would rather have Trump, even though the populist people have clearly spoken that we are sick of war. We're sick of money being sent to foreign countries. We've got problems here in America. We need to deal with those problems here. And you've got Nikki Haley, who sat on the board of Boeing, makes a bunch of weapons, and she's sitting there saying, we need more war. We're going to be safer when we go to World War III with Russia and China. That is what's going to keep us safe. That's her idea of, and then they're trying to actually get people to buy that idea. People aren't buying that. Actually, I want to show you another clip. This one is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. Luckily, this person is not running in the GOP primary. Which, by the way, Nikki Haley sounds like a Democrat too. I mean, that's why they're saying Nikki Haley's the one to watch, because guess what? She's saying the same crap the Democrats are saying. So that's why Democrats might choose the woman who's smart. She was a former governor, and she's saying all the same things that Democrats say. We need war. We need lots of war. So here's another person who sounds just like a Democrat. And lately, he's been voting alongside the Democrats, caucusing with them on a lot of things, totally against Trump. He's against the populist movement. Here's Mitt Romney. He was the GOP nominee for president at one point, and here he is talking about why the war in Ukraine is so great. It's like our best foreign policy investment, our best national defense investment that we've ever had. Here's why.
The single most important thing we can do to strengthen ourselves relative to China is to see Russia defeated in Ukraine, because they're allies, and Russia being weakens their ally China. I mean, so and by the way, being able to take an amount which equals what, about 5% of our military budget, but actually less than 5% of our military budget each year to help the Ukrainians is about the best national defense spending I think we've ever done. We're losing no lives in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are fighting heroically against Russia that has 1,500 nuclear weapons aimed at us. It's like, so we're diminishing and devastating the Russian military for a very small amount of money relative to what we spend in the rest of defense. A weakened Russia is a good thing. It tells China to rethink their territorial ambition. It tells Russia, perhaps most importantly, that the Putin vision of reestablishing the Russian Empire and grabbing the old former Soviet republics, that's not something that's going to work. It is very much in America's national interest, in our national interest, to help Ukraine. And the best thing we can do for America is to see people who have nuclear weapons aimed at us getting weaker.
Oh my God, that is so sick. So this is the best foreign policy use of defense, 5% of our budget, and we're not losing any lives. But the Ukrainians are fighting heroically. This is what we meant when we've been saying all along that the establishment and the military-industrial complex will fight to the last Ukrainian. I hope everybody in Ukraine sees this clip and understands exactly how the American neocons think. They're sitting there saying, well, it's not our lives. I mean, that's what's going to cost us votes. We don't want to be voted out of office. We don't want to lose our power. And we know that if we send our boys off to war, that's going to piss off the American people. Well, let's just go ahead and throw a bunch of Ukrainians at it and at Russia. And this is going to be so great. We're not going to lose any lives, even though they're losing hundreds of thousands of lives. Who cares? It's just Ukrainians. Nobody cares about them. They're not people. That's how he sounds. I mean, this is just... But guess what? He sounds just like a Democrat. Yeah, he does. He sounds just like a Democrat. But, oh, you wouldn't want Trump. Trump who's sitting there saying we shouldn't be sending any more money and we should be negotiating for peace. That's what we should be doing. But instead, we get these neocons who, and by the way, Mitt Romney was the guy that in 2016, when Donald Trump got the nomination, or when he won, and they were going to go off to the Electoral College. This is like, I don't know if you remember this fact, and it's hypocrisy at its finest, because they look at January 6th and they say, they were trying to subvert democracy. The American people voted, and look at what they were trying to do. Meanwhile, back in 2016, they were trying to convince the Electoral College voters to put forward instead a compromise candidate. That's what they called him, a compromise candidate. And they're saying, look, okay, fine, you can have a Republican. We just don't want Donald Trump. You know who we want? Mitt Romney. Why don't you guys just go to the Electoral College, vote for Mitt Romney, screw Donald Trump. We don't care if the American people voted for him. We don't care if the American people voted for him, right? Democracy right there at work. And they said, instead, let's put forward the compromise candidate, and that's who you're going to vote for. Democracy. I love democracy. I love the establishment and Democrats' opinion or viewpoint of what democracy is. Luckily, the Republican GOP base is not falling for this. They're not looking at, Nikki Haley as like the best thing that's she's going to be the one that's going to get all the votes. Here's actually a poll that came out. This was after the debates. Now, it is true that Trump is slipping a little bit, but there could be a few reasons for that. So you can look at this. He started off at the beginning of, this was last year, so it's a little over a year is what you're looking at here. 62% come April. So I think that's when a lot of the indictments were coming in. And then the indictments continued, and he's gone down to 50% of the voters want Donald Trump. You do see here that the next one down is Ron DeSantis. So he hit a peak in January, of 29%. People were pretty interested in him, but then he's dipped down to hardly anything. Now he's at 12%. So he's second in place, and he's at 12%. Vivek Ramaswamy, he is the dark horse that has come forward on the Republican GOP, and he's at 9%. And then down at the bottom, tied at 7%, you've got Nikki Haley and, surprisingly, Mike Pence. Who likes Mike Pence? Who are these people? I mean, Mike Pence, really? But Nikki Haley's getting a little bit of a boost, and so did Mike Pence, oddly. But so people are kind of looking at this poll, and they're saying, see, Donald Trump's losing now. I mean, he's far from losing. But they're saying, oh, see, he's slipping in the polls because he didn't do the debate. He should have shown up. And it's true, he should have shown up. He should know better. He should learn from Hillary Clinton. Her not visiting the Rust Belt states, her just saying, I take it for granted. I take these voters for granted, and I'm not going to go visit that. I'm not going to go there. I've got them in the bag. That killed her. And so Trump should really take a lesson in that, and he should face his GOP primary contender. He should just, why not? Go up there, and all he has to do is just look around and be like, okay, Ron DeSanctimonious, and whatever he's going to call people. That's what he should be doing. But there it is for you. You know, the people want something different than what the establishment continues to peddle and try to throw at us. Joe Biden and somebody else, anybody other than Trump. And it's just not working. The people they're worried about Joe Biden. They don't think that he's able to really hold. Trump is still killing it in the GOP primary. He's still going to get it. There's just, even if he slips down another 10, 20%, he's still going to win. So, you know, it's just, but will they let him? What else are they going to do to subvert democracy? What else are they going to try? Because you're an idiot is what they're saying to us. You're an idiot and you don't know who to vote for. And so we're going to do it for you in the name of democracy. Oh, I can't get enough of it. All right, guys, we're going to move on with the show. I want to tell you guys about the Wellness Company. So many of you know and love Dr. Peter McCullough. Him, along with a team of dedicated medical professionals, established the Wellness Company as a response to the failing medical system, all the corruption we've seen, oppressive government health policies, and the lack of natural approaches to cure illnesses, which many of us would love to see more of. Over 40% of Americans say that they would avoid a doctor or a hospital unless it was a catastrophic situation, and that's where the Wellness Company comes in. And I want to tell you specifically about this great kit that they offer called the Medical Emergency Kit. The kit contains 8 potentially life-saving medications for you to keep on hand in the event of natural disasters, supply chain shortages, medical emergencies, or like an apocalyptic situation. So what's great about this is, you know, a lot of us have first aid kits. We keep the antibiotics, or the ointments, and we keep the Band-Aids, and we've got those types of things. But these are the actual medications that you would need in the event of certain situations. So they've got emergency antibiotics, antivirals, antiparasitics, and all of that you would keep on hand. And they also give you a guidebook detailing when you would take these and what the dosage would be for each of these medications. So if you're like me and you want to be prepared for the unexpected, then just go to twc.health/Kim, use the promo code Kim, and you're going to save 15% off at checkout. That's twc.health/Kim, code Kim for 15% off.